All right. Hello there, people of the internet. My name is Ruto Jigero, and this is Political Headache. And I'm bringing you another video in our segment called The Fat Facts. Now, land is a very emotive issue, and this is Galana Kulalu. I want you to have a look at the pictures.
The Galana Kulalu project was conceived. In fact, what happened is the first 10,000, the pilot on the first 10,000 program took place. In fact, the first harvest of maize in that program came into being. And the recommendations from the trial on that project was we needed to build a dam, because the water from the river was not sufficient to do the Galana Kulalu project. We needed to scale up now and do the dam so that the water that was available, because the soils research and the trials showed that the soils could actually support the production of maize and other cereals. Unfortunately, it didn't move from there, because we didn't get the dam sorted. And you know that we had actually 57 dams that we would have wanted to do. Unfortunately, they didn't happen. They suffered.
So why didn't you do the dam?
Having looked at that, today we are talking about something that should make every Kenyan sit up and pay attention. It's about land, money, and whether our government just pulled off the deal of the century or got played like a fiddle by some smart people from Abu Dhabi. Land, as I have said, is an emotive issue in this country. That is why we are talking about this land into the Galana Kulalu story. 180,000 acres of it has just been handed to foreigners. And before you switch off thinking this is just another boring agricultural story, let me tell you something. This is about your future, your food, and your children's inheritance. All right, let's start with the basics. Last month, President Ruto witnessed the signing of what the government is calling a historic partnership. The Kenyan government just gave 180,000 acres of land. Now, to understand the magnitude of what the government has given, Nairobi city is 171 acres of land. That means what the government has done is to hand over in the hands of foreigners a land that is bigger than the city of Nairobi. And this company is actually called Dahra Agricultural Company. And get this, they are not even paying rent upfront. Instead, they are promising to invest $800 million over the next decade. Now, Dahra isn't just some startup operating out of a garage. These folks are serious players. They are based in Abu Dhabi. They already manage about 400,000 acres worldwide. What does that mean? Of all the acres they have, Kenya is giving them almost a half. And here is the kicker. 50% of their company is owned by the UAE government through something called a sovereign fund. So, when we say we are dealing with Dahra, we are really dealing with the UAE government. Let that sink in for a moment. The government is telling us that this is about food security. They say Dahra will grow maize for Kenyans, create jobs, and make us food sufficient. And because that is funny, Agriculture Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe even defended the long lease period, though they won't tell us exactly how long, saying investors need time to recoup their investment, which I find very interesting and very funny, because how can you give somebody 180,000 acres of land and you're not telling us for how long this person is going to be on this land? Here's what is fascinating. The UAE doesn't exactly have food surplus to share with the world. They actually, at the moment, import about 85% of their food. So why would UAE company invest $800 million to grow food for us out of the goodness of their hearts? That does not make sense. And look here, I know that UAE is a desert. There is nothing that grows there. So what I believe is going on in the heads of the UAE government is that we want to go around the world, get land, and then have crops that then we will take to our country to feed our people. So when they say that these people are going to grow maize for us, I'm just wondering, how are they growing maize for us again, while also sinking in their own $800 million to grow the same maize? How does that make sense? I don't know about you, but when someone shows up at my door offering to renovate my kitchen for free, my first question isn't when do we start? It is what is the catch? And to understand why this Dahra deal should worry you, we need to talk about Galana Kulalu's history. And oh boy, it is so interesting. So, in 2013, the government announces this grand vision, the largest irrigation scheme in East and Southern Africa. They budgeted 9 billion shillings to grow enough maize to feed 41% of the country. I don't know if you got that correctly. Galana Kulalu was supposed to feed 41% of Kenya. The National Irrigation Authority, also called NIA or NIA, was put in charge and everyone was excited. Finally, Kenya would be food secure. Fast forward to 2015 and we are partnering with Israel. We take a 6.35 billion shillings loan from Bank Leumur of Israel and hire an Israeli company called Green Arava to build a model farm. And what was the contract? 14.5 billion shillings for just 10,000 acres of land. That is crazy because that is 1.45 million shillings per acre, folks. To put that in perspective, you could buy a primary real estate somewhere for less the money per acre. Okay? Now, wait. It gets better. Parliament started asking questions. They wanted to know why the pre-feasibility study looked like it was written by someone's nephew. Why we single-handedly single-sourced the Israeli contractor, and why were we paying so much money for so little? The parliamentary committee suspended the project twice, actually. And guess what the Ministry of Agriculture did? They ignored Parliament and kept going. By 2019, this 14.5 billion shilling investment was producing 273.7 million shillings worth of maize per season. They had projected 1.2 billion shillings. That's not just missing the target. That's not even seeing the target from where you are standing. Okay? Then in 2020, the Israeli contractors packed up and left. Payment disputes, they said, we had already paid these people 5.9 actually billion out of the 6.35 billion loan. And they just walked away. The project died just like that. How about local communities? They complained that the Sabaki Galana River was drying up, that they were being marginalized, that their livelihoods was being destroyed. But who was listening? No one. So that is the track record. That is what happens when the government tries to do large-scale agriculture. They spend billions, deliver nothing, the contractors walk away rich, and Wanjiku is left holding an empty sophria. Okay? Now, President Ruto comes into office and looks at this mess. To his credit, he says enough is enough, with the government trying to run agriculture. He announces a new strategy, public-private partnerships. Let the private sector take the risk, bring the expertise, and deliver results. On paper, this makes sense. The government was clearly terrible at this job. So why not let the professional handle the job? Enter Dahra And here is where things get interesting. Dahra isn't just a company. When the UAE government bought 50% of them in 2020, the ADQ CEO, that is the Sovereign Wealth Fund, said Dahra is a pillar of Abu Dhabi and our country's food security mandate. Now, this is what I want you to understand. Note Kenya's food security mandate, Abu Dhabi's. The UAE has what they call an unprecedented focus on food security, because this might shock you. Desert countries don't grow a lot of food. They need to secure food sources abroad, and that's exactly what they are doing. All over the world, Romania, Serbia, Morocco, Egypt, Pakistan, Dahra has farms everywhere. Now, they are telling us that they want to lease 180,000 acres of our best agricultural land to grow food for us. Do you see the problem here? It's like your neighbor who has no garden and always borrows sugar, offering to plant vegetables in your backyard for your benefit. Sure, they will water the plants and do the work, but when harvest then comes, who do you think is going to be deciding where those vegetables go? I don't think it's yourself. It is your neighbor who is planting in your garden. Let's talk about what we know and what we don't know about this deal, because details matter. What we know. Dahra gets 180,000 acres, possibly 200,000 according to their own statements. They promise to invest about $800 million over 10 years. They'll build storage facilities, irrigation infrastructure, and farm roads. Fair enough. The project will be implemented in phases, subject to technical due diligence. What we don't know, and this is the most important, whenever we are talking about Kenya, we are always talking about unknowns. How long is this lease? The government says it's long enough for investors to recoup their investment, but won't give us a number. Is it 25 years? Is it 50 years? Is it 99 years? Your guess is as good as mine. Who owns the crops? The MOU says they will grow strategic crops for domestic consumption, but it does not say Dahra can't export surplus. And who defines surplus? What happens if there is a food crisis in the UAE? We have seen how quickly export bans get implicated when countries face food shortages. India banned rice exports, remember? Russia restricted wheat exports. When push comes to shove, people of this country, will Dahra prioritize Kenyan stomachs or the Emirate dinner tables? I think the latter. Here is another thing nobody talks about. This deal is tied to the Kenya-UAE Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. That is diplomatic speak, for this is bigger than just farming. This is about economic relationship, trade deals, and geopolitical positioning. The UAE is essentially saying, we'll invest in your agriculture, but this comes with strings attached. And those strings might not be visible until it is too late to cut them. Here is what should really worry you. Kenya isn't Dahra's first rodeo. They have been doing this all over the world, and there is a pattern. In Serbia, they acquired PKB, a major agricultural company. In Romania, they have massive operations. In Morocco, Egypt, Pakistan, everywhere they go, it is the same story. Acquire land, grow food, and send it back to the UAE or sell it on international markets. That is what they're always doing. So when when the government is telling us that Galana Kulalu was a project that was supposed to grow maize that will feed 41% of this country, you see how this is going and how it might end. The UAE calls this food security strategy. I call it very smart planning. When you are a rich country with no farmland, you go buy or lease land or farmland elsewhere. You secure your food supply while other countries become dependent on you for investment and jobs. And that is what I think is happening with this deal. And here is the brilliant part. They are not taking the land by force. They are not invading anyone. They are coming with contracts, investment promises, and job creation. They are making it look like they're helping you while securing their own interest. Is economic colonialism with a friendly face. Think about it. In 20 or 30 years, when climate change really starts biting, when there are water wars and food riots, who is going to have control over Kenya's most fertile, well-irrigated land? Will it be Kenyans or will it be UAE company with a very long lease and very expensive infrastructure that we can't afford to buy back? So, here are the questions that should be keeping our leaders awake at night. And the questions you should be asking first: why couldn't we find Kenyan investors or East African investors for this project? We have wealthy Kenyans, don't we? Why did we have to go to the UAE? Was this project even offered to local investors, or did we just assume they could handle it? That's a question that we should ask. Second, what happens to food prices? If Dahra controls massive food production and has international market access, what stopped them from selling it to the highest bidder? Sure, they promised to focus on domestic consumption, but promises and contracts are different things. Third, what about technology transfer? The government keeps talking about how Dahra will bring modern farming techniques, but are Kenyans learning these techniques, or are we just providing cheap labor for high-tech farming controlled by foreigners? This is what I don't understand. Fourth, what is our exit strategy? If this partnership goes wrong, and given our track record, that's not impossible, by the way, can we get our land back? Can we afford to buy back the infrastructure, or will we be stuck in a relationship we can't escape? That's the question. Here is the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to say out loud. This deal might work. Dahra might invest the money, create the jobs, and grow the food. They have the expertise and the capital that we dearly lack. The Galana Kulalu project was going nowhere under government management, but working and being good for Kenyans are two different things. That's what I think. A deal can work perfectly for the investors, while leaving the host country worse off in the long run. Just ask any African country that signed mining deals in the 1960s and 1970s. The companies made billions, the mines operated smoothly, and decades later, the countries are left with the holes in the ground and very little to show for their natural resources. And that is what, for me, Uduru Jagero, that's what bothers me. The question isn't whether Dahra will succeed. The question is whether the success will translate into genuine benefits for ordinary Kenyans, or whether we are just providing land and labor for someone else's food security strategy. That is the problem that I'm having. And here is what reality, here is what really bothers me. We are so desperate for investment as a country, so tired of government failures, and we are willing to hand over massive chunks of our country to foreigners without asking hard questions. We are so focused on short-term job creation that we are not even thinking about long-term consequences. Look, I am not against foreign investment. I am not against public-private partnerships. I am certainly not against fixing the Galana Kulalu mess, but I'm against giving away our birthright because we are so impatient or too desperate to negotiate better terms. This is our land. This is our food security. This is our children's inheritance, and we have every right to demand that any partnership serves the interest of this country and not last. The UAE didn't become prosperous by giving away their oil fields to foreign companies. They negotiated partnerships that kept control in their hands while accessing foreign expertise and capital. That's what smart countries do. Okay? So the next time President Ruto or Cabinet Secretary Kagwe tells you this deal is good for Kenya, we need to ask them, how do you know? Where is the contract and what are the terms? And what happens if you are wrong? Because if they are wrong, it won't be their land that goes for the next 50 years. It is ours. This has been Fat Facts, part of Political Headache. I am your host, Udur Jagero, reminding you to think critically, ask hard questions, and never let anyone politician or pundit tell you that questioning a deal makes you unpatriotic. True patriotism is protecting your country's interest, especially when your leaders tell you not to worry about it. Thank you very much. Consider subscribing to Political Headache. Hit on that notification bell so that whenever we have something like this, you can always get it the day it comes out, the minute it comes out. Until another episode, bye for now.